Ironically, one of the most horrifying true urban legends is perhaps one of the least known, at least in the US anyway. Because up in Toronto, Canada, almost everyone has heard the story of the Leaping Lawyer. According to the story, one well-to-do lawyer was overly keen on showing off all the features of his extravagant office space. Set into a huge glass skyscraper, the firm who made the huge plate glass windows of the office boasts that their windows were unbreakable, and that it would take a shot from an artillery gun to successfully shatter them. Apparently, this well-to-do lawyer was a fan of proving them right, and had a rather terrifying office party trick that he often used to wow his guests. Right when the party was in full swing, he would take a running jump at the plate glass windows after announcing, "Goodbye, cruel world." Those in attendance would scream in horror as the lawyer leapt towards the window, only to be met with his hysterical laughter when he harmlessly bounced off the toughened, polished glass. Over and over, the lawyer repeated his death-defying stunt, until one day, the unthinkable happened, and the unbreakable broke. The lawyer reeled up, ran at the glass, thrilled by the accompanying screams of the uninitiated. But as his large, speeding body came in contact with the glass, it shattered, and instead of turning around to laugh at those who had fallen for the prank, the lawyer was only met with the sound of his own screams as he plummeted 20 stories down to his death. It's an urban legend that has everything. The impossible is possible. The arrogant are punished, and it's about as theatrical as urban legends get. Yet perhaps the real horror only comes when we learn that the entire story is completely and utterly true. After completing an engineering degree before attending law school, Gary Hoy took a job practicing corporate and securities law in the eastern Canadian city of Toronto. He worked for a firm known as Holden Day Wilson, a law firm located on the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Center. Then on July 9, 1993, Hoy happened to notice someone giving a tour of the office to a group of articling students from a nearby university. Like he had done many times before, he attempted to demonstrate the strength of the structure's window glass by slamming himself into a window. So, in order to give the students a good fright, Hoy took his usual run-up and slammed into the plate glass. This is where the urban legend differs from the true story, as it turns out the glass was indeed unbreakable and remained unshattered even on the day of Hoy's death. Instead, some rusty old screws, tired of Hoy's continual abuses, simply dislodged and allowed the window pane to slip out of place. Right there, in front of the completely unsuspecting students, Gary Hoy screamed as he slipped through the gap in the floor and the window, plummeting 24 stories to his death. The building's structural engineer Bob Greer was contacted by the Toronto Star for comment. When he learned of Hoy's folly, he was quoted as saying, "I don't know of a single building code in the entire world that would allow a 160-pound man to run up against a window like that. He must have been out of his freaking mind." In another interview, the glass company who made the panes was quick to state that the windows didn't actually break. "We just want to make that clear. It popped out of its frame. That's what caused Mr. Hoy to fall. Shoddy workmanship, not our product." Holden Day Wilson never recovered from Hoy's death, and it was definitely one of the factors that contributed to the firm's eventual closure less than 3 years later. At the time, it was the largest law firm closure in Canadian history, but national newspapers seemed to forget that Hoy's death even occurred. The firm's closure was blamed on mismanagement and financial discrepancies, and the fact that Gary's ghost had haunted all those that had witnessed his death was totally ignored. Maybe that's because the story became so frequently mentioned in fictional media, referenced so heavily on TV and in film, that people just assured it was the fabrication of some overly imaginative writer. And we can understand why. The tale is truly a horrifying one, something we'd rather tell ourselves didn't happen, rather than facing the bone-chilling truth that a man really did end up taking his own life, all because of a dumb prank. As we all know, sewers are dark, dangerous, and scary places. The fictional home of supervillains, evil clowns, and post-pubescent reptiles trained in nujitsu. There's obviously a lot of nasty, gross, and hazardous stuff down there. Rats, used tampons, toilet paper, sewage, you name it. If you flush it, it's down there. But what about the infamous colonies of alligators that are so prevalent among urban legends? It's certainly a claim that's been around for decades, and you've probably heard some version of a tale that kicked off the urban legend. Supposedly, a spoiled young boy gets a baby alligator, of all things, for his birthday and flushes it down the toilet when he's bored of playing with it. Years later, as the story goes, the same boy reaches into a sewer grate for a lost baseball, and his arm is ripped off by a former pet, now monstrous and ravenous for blood. Some versions go even further to suggest that after the alligator was disposed of at such a young age, it would live the majority of its life in an environment unexposed to sunlight, and thus it would apparently in time lose its eyesight and the pigment in its hide, and that the reptile would grow to be blind and completely albino, pure white in color with red or pink eyes. Another reason why an albino alligator would retreat to an underground sewer is because of its vulnerability to the sun in the wild. As there is no dark pigment in the creature's skin, it has no protection from the sun, which makes it very hard for it to survive in the wild. Some people even spoke of mutant alligators living in the sewers, which have been exposed to many different types of toxic chemical waste which altered them, making them deformed and sometimes even larger and with strange coloring. The story is widely known and has appeared in many forms, including TV shows and horror films. Indeed, queries about the sewer gator rumors regularly arrive at the offices of the New York City Bureau of Sewers and are routinely denied. One source for the story is the 1959 book titled The World Beneath the City, which included an interview with the New Yorker claiming to have been sewer commissioner in the 1930s when a campaign was mounted to clean all the gators out of the sewer system. This seemed like solid evidence that even if alligators no longer lurk in the city's sewers, they did at one point and were enough of a menace that the city initiated a program to eradicate them. However, further investigation revealed that the man had never been commissioner, and in fact had delighted in spinning outrageous yarns. Trumping all myths, however, is the fact that alligators wouldn't survive long in the sewers. In a 1982 interview with the New York Times, Sewer Bureau spokesman John F. T. Flattery said, "I could cite you many cogent, logical reasons why the sewer system is not a fit habitat for an alligator, but suffice it to say, in the 28 years I have been in the sewer game, neither I nor any of the thousands of men who have worked to build, maintain, or repair the sewer system have ever seen one, and a 10-foot, 800-pound alligator would be hard to miss. Still, New York City is a big place and known for its strangeness. Some people have exotic pets, and it's possible that there are one or more doomed, miserable baby alligators somewhere, but finding or putting an alligator in a New York City sewer does not mean that decades of stories about giant alligators in the sewers are true. Until, that is, you come across one particular account from 2010. An alligator? A crocodile? We were stumped. But it was definitely, well, quite a reptilian reptile, said New Yorker Joyce Hackett. As I threaded my way back to my home in Manhattan through the side streets of Queens, I noticed a crowd of about 30 people gathered around the Old Navy Datsun. I rolled down my windows and asked the lady cop what was going on. Alligator, she said, as if the overriding issue here was that she should have already been on her break. I squatted down, and there it was on the wet asphalt, crouching motionless. Not an 8-inch baby alligator. This is more like 2 feet. But honestly, he seemed less like a menacing predator and more like an abandoned pet cowering under a car. Like many of us, Joyce was more than familiar with the whole alligator in the sewers trope, but never for a second did she believe it to be true. Yet when faced with overwhelming evidence to the contrary, even when she was forced to relent, storm drains and gutters all over the neighborhood were flooded from the downpour, Joyce mused. Maybe a wave had washed this creature onto the pavement of civilization, separating from its pack. When asked if she was actually shocked or scared by the gator sighting, Joyce could only answer, kind of, because New York is a city where one expects the unexpected, a city where alien creatures take root, and whose gutters, basements, archives, and streams serve up more stories than all its writers can think up. I mean, it's a city that writes itself. Each year, at least half a dozen people ask New York City's Bureau of Sewers about those infamous gators. John T. Flattery, chief of design, answers those queries routinely. I could cite you many cogent, logical reasons why the sewer system is not a fit habitat for an alligator, but suffice it to say, in the 28 years I have been in the sewer game, neither I, nor any of the thousands of men who have worked to build, maintain, or repair the sewer system have ever seen one. Flattery, whose sense of humor is of the dried yet deadly variety, added the one clear proof of the absence of alligators. Not a single union official has ever advanced alligator infestation as a reason for a pay increase for sewer workers. Even though it's next to impossible to prove something didn't happen, I would still suggest from the lack of credibility sightings, it's safe to assume that there are no alligators down there, he said. Yet despite what Flattery says, from the years 1927 and 1982, there have been 13 separate reports from people having sighted alligators in and around NYC's sewer system. The 2-foot baby alligator was caught in 2010 by the NYPD in the sewers in Queens, and it was most definitely from the sewers. But it's unlikely it was down there for long, as John Flattery is totally correct in his opinion that gators simply couldn't survive down there for any extended period of time due to the frigid winter weather. However, once the cold isn't a problem anymore, alligators actually flourish in certain sewer systems and have been sighted in the drains and sewers of Florida as recently as 2017, due to many of those waste outlets backing out into the swamps. During storm surges and the colder winter months, Florida alligators sometimes shelter in convenient drains and hunt for rats to supplement their diet. So despite all the naysayers insisting it's impossible, there is irrefutable evidence that alligators can live in American sewer systems. And although it's clear that they can't live down there for long, the Queens sewer gator sighting is undeniably true. So maybe be a little careful next time you're around a storm drain during heavy rain, because it's not just Pennywise that'll grab you by the arm before tearing it off. And you just might find yourself being eaten alive by something you never thought possible.